Before I start this video, I would like to say make sure you go to Instagram and follow me at Choose to Live Healthier. It's Choose to Live Healthier on Instagram. And I also have my website, which I will start to post more on, which is chooselivehealthier.com. So make sure you check that out, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hey guys, it's your girl Desiree. You already know what it is. I wanted to come to you guys with a quick video. I'm going to try to make it quick. I actually had made this topic, I think it was Friday. It was one of those days. And it kind of went a little longer than I wanted it to. And then I was just thinking just now I can actually focus on just one aspect of this today. And then I can just keep talking about other aspects as time goes on. So basically the whole series that I was basically starting was planning your 20s and being more strategic and intentional about the decisions that you make when you're in your 20s. And today I wanted to focus on children and the whole aspect of not having children before you have proper preparation. And I think this is just so important because a lot of times, for many different reasons, people can feel rushed into having children, especially when it comes to women. And children are a major responsibility. They're not baby dolls. They're not just something to play with. Yes, they can be fun. Yes, they are a blessing. But just like I heard somebody say on YouTube, you can bring a blessing into a cursed situation. So we want to be intentional about how we go about having children. Now, everybody's not going to have children for various reasons, but this is something that I felt that is important to talk about. So yes, of course, especially for women, you don't want to hold off on having children too long because obviously we have a biological clock. So there's like the other extreme side where it's like, oh, just focus on your career. You don't need to be dating any guys and just focus on that. And then sometimes by the time women do that, they're in their mid 30s or almost early 40s, and then it becomes kind of late for them not only to find the proper mate but also to a proper partner, I should say. And but they also make it a little more challenging for themselves when it comes to childbearing. So people say, "Oh, well, it's different now. They have technology." Yes, but that still doesn't change the fact that nature is still stands. And as a woman gets older, her ability to have children and the process of how that's going to come about and all that stuff is going to be a little more challenging as time goes on. Obviously, every woman is different, but that's something to consider. And then also, you have less time with your children because you're older when you finally do have them. Yes, people are living longer, but that's neither here nor there. So, also, children cost money. It's not cheap to have children. And a lot of people only think about the basic necessities like food, shelter, clothes, uh, things of that sort. But then there's also, what if your child is really good at singing? What if your child is really good at art? And then they might want to have those supplies. They might want to go to classes. And even just things that kids probably should learn, like learning how to swim. Maybe sometimes they go away to camp for the summer. You may want to take them on traveling. I mean, that's really important for children to be able to travel and see the world. But if you are in a position where you don't have any money, you can't really take your kids anywhere. And you have so many people, even to this day as adults, who can say that they were never really able to go anywhere outside of where they grew up because their parents never had any money. So it's just unfortunate. Yes, your children will probably still come out okay, but will they be soaring? Will they be excelling? Not Usually not so as the other children who have been able to be given more opportunities based on the resources that their parents had. Obviously, money is not everything. You can have money and then still not have the access to different networks and things like that that you may want to get your children in, but at least you'll have the money to be able to invest in the knowledge, to be able to find out how to do those things for your children. So people don't think about that, but that's really important. Also, children take a lot of time. It's not something like just simple where I just feed them for a little bit and then just put them aside. Yes, there are parents who probably do that, but it's important that parents obviously take time with their children. It's not just feeding them, giving them a bath, taking them to school. They also, what about talking to them? What about listening to them? What about playing with them? What about taking them places? It's not just about the basics. Just like I was saying with money, I'm not a parent, so I'm not speaking from experience. I'm speaking based on what I've seen and what I've heard people say who have children. And I don't think you need to be a parent to understand these things, that children do take time and they do take money. The next thing is children take a toll on you, and that's not necessarily in a negative way, but children are children and they are in a place where they need a lot of encouragement, a lot of support, a lot of guidance, a lot of wisdom. They need time, they need attention. So that's going to take not just time from you and money from you, like I mentioned, but also energy. And a lot of us, can we say that we are emotionally strong? Can we say that we are mentally strong? Can we say that we are spiritually strong? A lot of people these days are not where they should be. Of course, you're never going to be 100% where you should be when you have children, but at least you should be at a place where you've been preparing over a course of years before you have children so that you're not emotionally unstable. Of course, every parent, sometimes they get a little attitude or they may say something they shouldn't say. Nobody is going to be 100% all the time. However, it's going to be a difference between a parent who's been working on themselves and striving to be a better person before they had children versus somebody who's emotionally unstable. They have a lot of trauma they haven't dealt with. They have a lot of anger, a lot of baggage they haven't dealt with. Or they ended up having a child with somebody who's very abusive, very toxic, and that's just going to make the situation 10 times harder for them to be able to raise that child as opposed to the person who did their due diligence, took their time to make sure that they found somebody that was compatible, made sure that they worked on themselves, made sure that they chose somebody else who's also working on themselves so that when they got together, yes, it's not guaranteed, but the chances of it working out would be more likely. Even if those parents don't stay together for ever, at least they'll be able to co-parent in the most healthy way possible, as opposed to the parents who both were emotionally unstable, and or maybe one was okay but the other one wasn't, and now there's all this unnecessary conflict when it comes to raising these children. The next one, needing guidance, I mentioned that children need guidance, they need support, they need somebody to talk to, they need parents that can listen. Also, going back to the taking time, I had wrote down, can you stay home, especially as a woman? A lot of women, they are not able to stay home, especially when it comes to certain socioeconomic backgrounds, because there's not enough income. So do you have enough time now to be able to raise the children in the way that you would like to raise them? And then that goes back to, now you have to put them in certain situations where you have other people raising your kids much more than you're raising them. So just to think about it, just women who stay home and they take care of the kids, they talk about how much work it is. So just imagine how much more work it will be as a woman if you have to also go out and work and come home and take care of the kids, make sure the house is fine, and make sure your husband is okay, and make sure that you yourself is fine. It's a lot on you, and a lot of women, they find themselves worn out physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, because they're just doing so much. You're a woman and your body is already going through so many changes, and you have to do all these things. So I would encourage, especially young women, if you can just think about that. What kind of life do you want? Do you want a life where you have to work? Some women actually enjoy it, but I'll just let you know that it's 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a whole lot of work, even more so than somebody who stays home, because that's a lot of work in of itself, even when you are staying home. I personally don't want that type of life. I don't want a life where I have to go out and work and take care of kids and take care of the house and take care of my husband and myself. I just think that just doesn't make any sense to me, because if that's the case, I might as well just be by myself. Why take on all that burden and all that stress unnecessarily? That's just me, but everybody is different. But I just want to put that out there, because sometimes younger women, or just any age, but especially younger women, they don't think about that. So they go into it and then they become bitter, they become drained, and when you look at it, a lot of the divorces are initiated by women, and it makes me wonder, maybe it wasn't necessarily that these women didn't want to get married. Maybe it was that once they got in it and it became something that they really didn't want, or it just wasn't what they thought it was going to be. So we just have to think about what we want first before we get into stuff. The same thing with children. You might think you want children, or maybe you do, but you might think you want them now, but then when you get in that situation, you realize, I didn't really want that right now, or I wasn't ready for that right now. So we just have to think about that stuff before we just rush into these major commitments when it comes to marriage and children. But especially children, because children didn't ask to be here. We are the ones who bring them in here. And most pregnancies can be prevented. Yes, you have exceptions, but most of them can be prevented. So I think it's important for us to take responsibility for what we do. We say, oh, it's my body, I can do whatever I want. Okay, well, if it's your body, then be responsible with it, right? So we have to hold ourselves accountable, not just men, but also women, because men are not the only ones who are doing it. Women, we also are allowing these men to lay with us and have these children with us, right? So at what point do we hold ourselves responsible as well for the children that we're bringing forth in unnecessary drama and unhealthy situations? If you're in your 20s, you're supposed to be enjoying your 20s. This is where you're figuring out yourself. This is where you're building your finances. This is where you're traveling. You're seeing the world. You're building yourself emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially, socially. You're making sure your mind is right, your emotions are right, your spirit is right, your mental state is right. So if you bring a child into that prematurely, I mean, it can still work. Some people say, oh, God will make a way and it could still work out. Yes, but that's not the way that we probably should be going about having kids. It should be, okay, I wasn't 100% ready. However, I did the best that I could, and this is a blessing. Yes, it's still going to be challenging, but at least we prepared the best that we could, as opposed to, wow, we didn't even plan this. We're not even ready. He's emotionally unstable. I'm emotionally unstable. We don't even got any money. Sometimes it's literally all of the above, and now it's like we just got to go figure it out now we got to scrape what we can. We got to be just asking everybody for, like, what do we got to do, I just don't feel like that's just healthy, and it's also not healthy for the children. I think that's why also a lot of couples also break up once the baby comes, because it wasn't enough preparation before that child came. The child, I heard somebody say that recently, that child, a lot of times it's a test of the relationship. A lot of relationships will stay together because it's like, well, we're kind of just making it by, we're just making it work. We're not excelling, but we're making it work. But then when the child comes, it's like, it'll really test that relationship and how strong that relationship is, how strong that mother is and how that father is, and how strong they are together, right? Because we are our own individuals, but we also are a couple together. So it's important to think about this stuff. Yes, marriage isn't guaranteed, but it makes a difference if you choose the right person based on compatibility. So obviously, if you go out there, you don't do your due diligence, and you just marry somebody just because they want to marry you, or just because it's convenient, or just because they're safe. A lot of men do it as well. They marry a woman because maybe she hasn't had a lot of sexual partners, or maybe because she's really, really pretty, or maybe because she's nice, and there's really no major maybe sexual compatibility there, or maybe there's really no religious compatibility there, or whatever it is, and now he's out there looking for more, because he didn't do his due diligence when he was dating. I'm not saying that if he did, he can't still go out there and cheat. The same thing for a woman, but it will limit the chances of the marriage failing if they did their due diligence as much as possible before they decided to get married. The same thing with children. I'm not saying that if you have children, you have the money, you have the finances, you have your mind right, everything right, and it still can't go left. Of course, some children are raised in the best environments that they possibly can, and they still turn out a certain way. But that's not the parents' responsibility. The parents did everything they could to give that child the best life that they can excel at, and that child chose to, in their adulthood or whenever, go a different path. And then there's so many factors to that. Some people are dealing with mental health problems. Some people are dealing with they have peer pressure. I mean, there's so many other things that could have led that child to go left, away from what their parents taught them. But at least they have that foundation, right? And at least they always have something that they can come back to, as opposed to the child who's raised in dysfunction and they're just kind of all out there because their parents are not prepared. I'm not saying it's all the parents' fault, but the parents have to be held responsible for the environment and the relationship that they created, to bring that child into the world, because that child did not ask to be here. So we have to be responsible, especially in 2019. There's really no excuse for us to be bringing children. I'm speaking for myself as well. I've never had a child, but I'm not beyond anybody. It can happen to me. It can happen to anybody, where you can bring a child into the world in a situation that you knew that probably wasn't a good idea. So I just want us to think about this, because there's just so much rhetoric about, oh, God will make a way, or my grandma did it so you could do it, and you're getting older, so you just need to have a baby, because what if you don't have one? And yes, like I said, you don't want to wait too long if that's really your calling, is to get married and to have children. But at the same time, you don't want to be rushing into stuff prematurely. And I'd rather you just wait and then never be able to have children, or have them later in life, than for you to prematurely have them now, and then your life is 10 times more difficult and more stressful than it would have been if you had just been patient and waited for the blessing later on. So that's just my take on it. Everybody's going to see it differently. I don't think that children should be raised in unnecessary trauma, unnecessary stress, unnecessary struggle. Of course, you're going to have those things even in a even in the quote unquote perfect home, which there is none. But at least it would just be like the everyday stresses. Everybody has stresses. But some of us have gone through unnecessary trauma that could have been avoided because of the way that we were brought into this world. We were dealt really bad cards because our parents didn't make proper decisions. And because I grew up that way, and a lot of other people probably have grew up that way, that should be more of a reason why we should be thinking even more critically about how we bring our children into the world, because we know what it's like to grow up in dysfunction, and we shouldn't want the same things for our children and for our communities, because families create communities, and then that creates society. So I hope that this has been helpful to somebody, and take care. Have a good day. Bye.